Shalom Aleichem, everybody. Welcome to the Yiboneh Beit Midrash. Welcome home to Torah. A very warm welcome. I want to thank the guys, the women also, who are here, who, whatever, the weather out there, who knows, it's going to rain, it's not going to rain, but it's very cold. Thank you for coming. And for those on Skype, thank you for joining us. Here we go. Now, what we are going to deal with, we always deal with fundamental issues, okay? And of course, we want you to learn Hebrew. And for those who are watching already for a period of time, know, down below there's a link in the YouTube description box for the source sheets. They don't get the English source sheets, of course, the ones that I don't translate the Yakar. I just bring out some of the translations of Rashi and of the Chumash that we'll be using, so it'll make it easier to follow along. So anyway, but if you do, you should be interested, I hope, in following along in the Hebrew. Go to the website, which is the link is below, and therefore I implore you to follow using your finger along with the Hebrew. We're in Parashat Beshalach, chapter 14 in Numbers, in Exodus, and we're going to be dealing with verse 2. Now, I'd like to get to verse 5 as well, but let's start with verse 2. We're going to focus mainly on, well, at least in Hebrew, 3 words. In English, it seems like 5. In front of Baal Tzafon, right? Let's read the whole verse. Speak to the children of Israel and let them turn back. So God is telling Moses that he should command, right? Basically tell the children of Israel that they're going to turn around at a certain point and they're going to encamp in a certain place. Now, where they're going to encamp from, in front of Pi Hachirot, which seems to be, according to the Torah, if we know geography, between a place called Migdol and the sea. But it also says in front of Baal Tzafon, you shall encamp opposite by the sea. Okay? So let's just read the Hebrew. The Hebrew, it says like this. Da'ber el b'nei Yisrael, v'yeshuvu v'yachanu lifnei pi hachirot, bein Migdol u'bein hayam. So far, so good. Yeah. And here we have our famous 3 Hebrew words we're going to deal and focus on a lot for the next bit. Lifnei Baal Tzafon. Okay? In front of this place called Baal Tzafon. Nicho tachanu al hayam. Now, before we go into the Yakar, we might as well just examine Rashi, because this is one of the things that Rashi is going to the Yakar is going to deal with. The second part, right? If you look in Rashi towards the bottom, it says in front of Baal Tzafon. Okay, ready? Like drum roll, please. Okay, this is like. Okay, Rashi is sometimes very curt, very short and concise. And what we're going to try to do is unravel what exactly the message Rashi is trying to convey to us. Only this was left from all the Egyptian deities. In other words, there were many idols amongst the Egyptians, and even if they weren't idols, let's just talk about deities in general. And during the 10 plagues, many of their, let's say, philosophies, their reason to believe in these deities were destroyed. So the only one that was seemed to be left of the Egyptian deities was this one, Baal Tzafon, and Hashem made it this way, right? Hashem destroyed their philosophies and their deities up until this point where this Baal Tzafon was still standing. Ready? I would ask you for a drum roll again, but we'll hold off on that. In order to mislead them, we've been speaking a lot about what it seems to be as deceit when it comes, and Rabbi Breitowitz spoke about this, the deceit or strategies in war. You have no obligation to tell your enemy your plan, right? We recently had a president of the United States who said there's no reason to tell our enemies what we're going to do. Okay? Very proud of that person. But anyway, that's not what we do. You don't tell your enemy your plan. Not only that, you are allowed to let them think what they want to think in order to deceive them. Okay, so that's what Rashi is telling us, that this was left in order to mislead them, so that they would say that their own deity is very powerful. Well, does Rashi explain what this deity represented? Or the whole story? Not yet. Certainly Rashi doesn't seem to imply what exactly it was, but whatever it was, the Baal Tzafon, caused them to be misled, caused them to make a mistake, thinking that this was still a very powerful God. And now, just to know that Rashi quotes from Job 12, chapter 12, verse 23, and it's a very interesting verse, and I think this really applies. We have to have faith. We have to know Hashem will build up the haughty, He'll make the nations great, and destroys them. Now, we're really talking about the fact that they themselves, He allows them, right? There's free will. And they make themselves so haughty, right? There's an expression in English, the bigger you are, the harder you fall, right? So when you make yourself all kinds of haughty, when you think you're, when there's no room for God, let's say, because you're everything, and there's going to be not such nice ending, okay? Now, it's interesting because the word is masgi legoyim via avdem. So the word masge is spelled with a sin, not a shin, and that's okay. The reason I'm pointing this out, if we look in Rashi, he mentions the word masge. Some say what he did was, as he did to the Egyptians when they overtook Israel before Baal Tzafon. In other words, we're right now in Rashi in Job. And he's describing what it means that he makes nations great and destroys them. It's what Hashem did to the Egyptians. When he, what? It's all it says, he did to the Egyptians when they overtook Israel. He destroyed them. Okay, they erred, they made a mistake. And they said, this is, remember, now in the head, we're in the heads of the Egyptians. You should know that he agreed with us. Perhaps we're talking about Hashem. In other words, we're in the head of the Egyptian. Perhaps, maybe he, Hashem, whatever almighty power there is, right? Because we had these astrologers, right? And they said, let's drown the firstborn of every Jew, right? So what happens? You should know that he agreed with us to drown them in the sea as we had decreed. I just want to reiterate that we are inside of the heads of the Egyptians, okay? So we have to read it as if they're saying it, okay? They erred, and this is what they said. You should know that he agreed with us. Who's he? Hashem, all right? We originally wanted to kill all the Jews by throwing them into the sea. And now look at them. They're stuck right by the sea. This is a reason that they might think they can overthrow the Jews at this moment. What did they originally decree in Exodus chapter 1, verse 22? They said, this is what they said, every son that is born, right? Pharaoh said this to his people, you shall cast into the river. And they also said, meaning maybe at this point, that what? That their deity, Baal Tzafon, is mighty. Why? Because it still existed. Hashem destroyed all the other deities at this point, but this one still stood. So what were they saying? Chas v'shalom that a Jew should ever say this. Seeing that no acts of judgment were performed by God upon it, as they were upon all the other gods of Egypt. And again, this is inside the head of the Egyptian. And therefore believing that the omnipresent caused that, the omnipresent, actually, this is what we're saying, this is what Rashi's saying, and I underlined it. The omnipresent, really, this was his doing. He caused them to be misled in order to drown them. So he caused, right, where do we get our thoughts? It's amazing. If we really think about it, our own thoughts are emanating from Hashem's thoughts. We're like little, antennas, right? And you need to eat kosher or eat carefully, behave carefully. You have to keep that antenna in good shape. Okay, because we are creating the image of God. There is a certain aspect, right, in terms of talking to the soul. The soul is obviously throughout your entire body. You don't know exactly pinpoint where it is, but there's an aspect of our soul that is sitting and resting around the crown of our head, around the brain. Okay? But this expression is not the main one. This explanation is not the main one. Now, I had a little problem with this when I read it earlier, and I was learning with my chavrusa. Now, you have to understand, I mentioned about the shin and versus a sin. A sin, it's the same as a shin, but the dot is on the left, and it sounds like a soft S, whereas opposed to the shin is like a SH sound, right? And what would the word mean if the sin had a shin? Let's examine. So Rashi's saying, well, this is not really the main real explanation, because if it would have been so, in other words, what we just said, then it should have been dotted on the right and therefore the word shogeh means to make a mistake, to mislead. But Rashi's pointing out that it's not with the shin, it's with the sin. And that has to do with haughtiness. Well, let's see. He said this is what it really means. It means making great, the expression of segia koach, having great strength, meaning to raise up. He makes the nations great and causes them to prosper. And we know many nations throughout time and history have prospered greatly, right? We remember the golden age of Spain, but you know what happened to them. And guess what happens? And their heart becomes haughty with or through their prosperity, so that the fact that they prosper is actually part of their destruction. Unbelievable. We have to be very careful about today's world, right? Now, we didn't even begin the Yakar. Now we're going to get into the Yakar, because the very first thing he quotes is Rashi. So I wanted to go through that idea as a foundation. Let's begin. Lifnei Baal Tzafon, hu nishar mikol Elohei Mitzrayim. He's quoting Rashi, the Yakar is quoting Rashi, that this Baal Tzafon remained from all the other gods. Now, we can deduce from that, you have to use your brain, that there must have been other gods, meaning they must have believed in a lot of other gods. And he's going to explain that each god that they believed in had a unique mission or purpose or strength, right? Like we hear about the god of love, like ancient Egypt, or the god of fertility, or the god of wealth, or the god of war, right? Each one of these people who believe in idols have a breakdown of what is unique about that particular god that they believe in. So we're going to discuss the Baal Tzafon. But in the meantime, the Yakar says, V'yesh lanu li tein tam. We have to give a little bit of a reason for this, for the statement that was just made, that what? This Baal Tzafon remains from all the other gods of Egypt. Lamen nisharazu yoter mishar Elohus. Why would this god in particular remain from all the other gods that were destroyed by the Almighty in Egypt? V'niri mizeh. It seems like this. Shayu lehen harbe avodos zaros. They had many ways of serving or worshiping other gods. Laharbe mazalos, because they served many different, I'll use the word constellations, but we know that means false gods. Kikol mazal yesh lo koach v'hushpa'a al eze inyan miyuchad. Because there is to each one of these different constellations or these different false gods a certain strength or power and influence that is unique to that particular idol. Baal Tzafon, and this one we're discussing, Baal Tzafon, Hainu, Havodah Zara Sher Chashvu Ki Mimeno Yushpa Lehem Zahav Rav Pninim. It happens to be what they thought about this particular idol. This is what they considered. This was the one of wealth. This is you want wealth? You worship this and you'll be rich. Whatever. But this is the one that provides wealth. Now, interestingly, in Job, I'll tell you where it is. It's number 4. No, it's number 6 on your English source sheet. It's Job 37:22. Now, this in context does not mean what the Yakar is saying, but it's brought down many times when we discuss the idea of what does the north represent. The north represents evil. It also represents wealth, right? We know that. I think we don't believe this in its entirety, right? But there is this concept in English. They say that money is the source of all evil. I'm not even sure if I'm quoting it right, okay? But it sounds something like that. So listen to Job. Job says gold comes from the north, right? Look at the Hebrew. Mitzafon, from the north, zahav ye'eta. It's coming from the north. What do you mean gold's coming from the north? Therefore what? And we translate it in the context that doesn't mean that, but that's okay. Gold comes from the north. I just want to take you to Jeremiah chapter 1, verse 14, which is the next source. Again, the Yakar doesn't bring this down, but I felt this helps us understand what it means that the gold or wealth comes from the north. I just want to, before I read the Jeremiah, because we are talking about Babylon being in the north, but it's interesting because it says evil comes from the north. That in the beginning, the Yakar, in the beginning of Breshit, the Yakar explains, why does the Torah begin with a bet? And the idea is we're not supposed to look behind us, because that's beyond the sun. There's nothing new under the sun. Everything in the Torah is about this world. So you have a bet that kind of, it's like it closes off whatever was behind. Okay? But what's forward? Okay. When you think about how we read the Torah, okay, now no matter where in the world you're going to be facing Jerusalem. So, but let's just say when you're in Jerusalem, most people are going to be facing east. Okay? You basically, the idea is you read the Torah, you face east. And when you have it opened, the scroll is open in front of you, the bet is going to be open to the north. The sun itself starts in the east, and then, at least, I don't know, the northern hemisphere is the same thing, but it goes to the south, and then it sets in the west. So even the bet represents mitachas hashemesh. We are in this world under the sun, in this world. But why is it open to the north? Because the Torah is the antidote to the Yetzer Hara. You need this, let's just say, at least in this world, the conflict, so to speak, in order for growth to happen, in order for you to choose good, in order for you to, the Torah itself is the antidote to the Yetzer Hara. So there's the Yakar over there, check it out in Genesis, one of the first verses. And here you have it, first verse itself. Let's just go to Jeremiah chapter 1:14. And the Lord said to me, Jeremiah says, from the north the misfortune will break forth. Now in Hebrew, it says something I think a little bit more interesting, but why they translate as misfortune, I get. Mitzathon tipatach hara'ah. So it means that from the north will open up, will break forth evil. I mean, that's hara, misfortune, not good things. Okay? So I just wanted to use that verse just to drive it home a little bit. Something about the north. So this particular idol is called Baal Tzafon. Again, going back to the idea of wealth. The Egyptians believed in many different gods. This particular god was the god of wealth. And they believed that's where they get all their wealth from. I mean, I'm not trying to lead you anywhere, but we took all their wealth. Did we? We took a lot. We didn't take it all. But let's continue and find out what's going on. The Hisher Kadosh Baruch Hu Dafka Avodah Zarah Zu Lahatotam. Hashem specifically, with intent, let this idol remain. We encamped by the Baal Tzafon in order to mislead them, lahatotam, to cause them to be mistaken, to show them, to make them be misled. Shiyomru avodah zarah zu titba elbonam amal shenotlu yisrael mamonam shalokadin. What could they justify? Many times, Pharaoh himself said, "You're right, your God is right, we're the sinners, we're wrong." He said that several times, okay? I have the verses, it's in chapter 9, verse 27, again in chapter 10, verse 16. So in a certain sense, Pharaoh, no matter how bad and evil he was, he's still a human being, and he could come to some recognition of the evilness of himself and his people, but to steal all the gold, or so much gold, and I say steal loosely, they took it away, he couldn't justify that. And he felt, wow, my idol, Baal Tzafon, they're stuck right there. We're going to get it back. So we were justified. Not that everything else was not justified. Hashem was justified. We were not. But here, maybe, everything will come to a head. Ki b'kol shar hamakos hitzdik paro. It's hadinalav. That he understood there's some justification for the destruction of Egypt because of the way they treated the Jews, right? Whether you're that smart or that spiritual that you can put it together, measure for measure, however it is, we saw, and I can read the verses because they're actually quite beautiful verses that Pharaoh himself would say. Let's see. We have it here on my page. I think I put it on the page. You see where it is? Yeah. It's number 10. See, in number 10, Pharaoh sent and summoned Moses and Aaron, said to them, this is chapter 9, verse 27, I have sinned this time. The Lord is the righteous one, and I and my people are the guilty ones. Chatasi apam, Hashem tzaddik, va'ani va'ami harashayim. And again in chapter 10, verse 16, Pharaoh hastened to summon Moses and Aaron. He said, I have sinned against the Lord, your God, and against you. Chatasi la Hashem elokechem v'lechem. So there's some understanding within Pharaoh, whether it was conscious or subconscious. But when it came to the wealth, this really, he just couldn't figure it out. So as the Yakar is explaining, so that but regarding the other plagues, he was able to understand perhaps why that these calamities came upon him. Not only, but like if it affects us, this is how we think, right? This is how they thought. That it affects us negatively, that means that the powers in heaven, right, these idols, these philosophical ideas are destroyed. Whatever's above in heaven is also affected. Okay? Let's continue. Aval hamaman, but when it comes to money, and I'll say something else, money can drive people crazy. And maybe this would lead to his downfall, as we know. Like let's say when it came to Hitler Yamak Shema, it wasn't money, it was his desire to kill the Jews, that he took the trains from the front line, which he needed to send troops to, instead using the trains to destroy the Jews, and this was part of. I'm sure there were other issues why he lost World War II. But this is one of the things he caused himself. Here Pharaoh was so concerned about the money. That he could not fathom, couldn't figure out, and he thought there's no justification and there's certainly no justice. This doesn't make sense that the Jewish people took all this money. Al came, therefore. What did God do? He made sure to let this idol remain. Nishar Baal Tzafon. He allowed this particular idol to remain. Shiyomru, that they themselves would say that again, inside the head of the Egyptians, Kasha Yirasam, the Yitba min Yisrael Mamonam Shehishilum, that it was that they thought they still had the power, or their God still had the power, and therefore would make a claim, a rightful, justified claim, to get all the money back that the Jews were lent. V'zeshe ne'amar. Now we understand even better in verse 5, which we will deal with it at length, but when in verse 5, it says, V'yehafech lavav paro. I'll tell you where that is found on the source sheet. And we're looking for 14.5. It's number 14. So it says over there, it was reported to Pharaoh that the people had fled. And Pharaoh and his servants, and these are the interesting words, had a change of heart towards the people. And this is what they said. What have we done? That we released Israel from serving us. Now in Hebrew, V'yahafech levav paro v'avodav el ha'am. Okay, that's the Hebrew. Look at Rashi at the bottom. Now they had a change of heart to pursue them. The change of heart was in order for them to pursue us. What caused their change of heart? Seeing that the Baal Tzafon was still there. Hashem was setting everything up. He always does. The truth will always come out in the end. Okay? He orchestrates everything. We have, hopefully, not little faith. We have faith, believe, and understand that Hashem prepares all of our footsteps. Just like He prepares mine, He prepares theirs. The enemy, everyone else in the world. Not that everyone else in the world is my enemy. Chas v'shalom. But let's read again Rashi. Now they had a change of heart to pursue the Israelites on what? I got to hear the words. On account of the money they had lent them. Specifically, what changed their hearts? Why? As we just said, it was because of, even though we're in 14.5, we're seeing it's all being orchestrated already in verse 2. Okay? Now, Perush Rashi. Rashi specifically says the Yakar, Bishvil mamonam sheshilum. It's specifically, what changed their hearts? It was specifically based on the money that they had lent them. And now we understand later on in the same verse. Ki shilachnu es Yisrael me'avdenu. Now, we don't have slaves today, but the concept is that if a slave does own something or acquire something, the owner really acquires it. Now, what did they do? What did they say? Well, they let them go. In fact, they chased them out. They were quite, at their wits' end with us. Nevertheless, they released us from slavery. And now they were having second thoughts. What do they call that? The freeing of slaves' remorse. Because what would have happened? They have this is what they're thinking. They have all our gold. If they were still our slaves, whatever the slave acquires, the master acquires. Now, I feel the loss. And that's the whole idea here. So he brings down in Gemara Psachim, Lefi shekol ma shekana eved kano rabo. That's just the principle that whatever the slave acquires, really it's the master of the slave that acquires, right? So the ikar devarav haya bavur mamon. This whole idea that we're bringing down, meaning not only that his heart was changed and the servants' of hearts were changed, and they had this freedom of emancipation remorse. The emancipation remorse, but also basically because of Baal Tzafon. This is all the primacy of the message that in Pharaoh's words, in the text, is all because of the money. V'tola paro devara b'ma shero shinisha Baal Tzafon mikol Elohei Mitzrayim. Bottom line, and it is the bottom line, it's the last line of this paragraph, that Paro put or made dependent his words from the fact that he saw that Israel's where they are, but it says where they are by the Baal Tzafon, that the Baal Tzafon remained from all of the other deities that the Mitzrayim believed in, and this is what brought them to this point. Okay, I want to focus now on chapter 14, verse 5. And it says, it was reported to Pharaoh that the people had fled. The people is the first time the people is being said in this verse. We're going to see it's going to be said again. And Pharaoh and his servants had a change of heart towards the people. Second time. It's unusual. I mean, this is the whole idea of knowing that there's a message here. The fact that people is used twice has to have a message. And not only that, wait. And they said, what is this that we have done, that we have released Israel from serving us? The third time that we, the people, is being used is twice as the people, described as the people, and the third time as Israel. Okay? Now I want to go into the Yakar and see, first he's going to ask three really good questions. I think they're very good questions. Would I have come up with these questions on my own? I don't think so. But maybe with enough time and enough study, maybe. So the first thing he points out is the word boreach. It should have said boreach. Boreach mi boile. It doesn't. It says barach. Barach means fled, past tense. Okay? Now that happened chapters ago. Okay? We're in chapter 14 now. So why are they coming and telling him now that they fled? Meaning they're fleeing. Isn't this the whole idea that now we only sent them for a 3-day journey, and they weren't fleeing per se in their minds. They were going to do whatever they did in the desert for 3 days, but they realized they're not coming back. Now they're fleeing. So the Yakar says it could have said boreach. It should have said boreach, that they're actually fleeing. This is the information, the new information coming to Pharaoh, right? We talked about this before we started. Learning is something not intuitive, counterintuitive. Otherwise, you don't need to learn it. It's something known. Okay, so it should have said they are fleeing now. Okay, it doesn't. Sharei mitchila shilcha miretzono. In fact, when they were originally sent, it sounds like that. We know that Pharaoh said, "Get out of here." So there's no fleeing when you're telling someone, "Get," right? Get. You're not going to come and say, "Oh, they're fleeing," or "They fled." Okay, so this already happened, miratzono, with their knowledge and will. V'akshav heim borchim. The truth is, right now they're fleeing. And that should have been the word used. So the question is, why did they come and inform him of something that happened, Barach as opposed to Boreach? First question. Second question is, Lama kara shtei pa'amim ha'am? Why are they twice called the name or description, the people? Ubishlishit Amar, and in the third description, Ki shilachnu es Yisrael, for we have sent Israel, right? Using the word Israel. We already described, that's a good question. And the third one, I don't know, I'm going to say maybe this is the best of all, but it's good to, you see the whole idea. Eich malo libo leilech im shesh meos rechev al shishim ribo. What overtook Pharaoh? What filled his heart or went through his brain? What affected his thoughts? That he would send, how many did he send? 600 chariots after 600,000 people. I did the math for you. It's not that hard, but one, how do you say it? 1/10 of 1%. Now that's if you use the slower number of 600,000. That was only 600,000 able, capable men of war between the age of 20 and 60. But there were at least 3 million of us, plus another 6 million Erev Rav. You're talking about 9 million people. You work out the math. I worked it out for 600 running after 600,000. What went through Pharaoh's mind that he could overtake them, that he would somehow have an effect with such a small army? It's a good question. So, now Afal Pisha Nemar, even though the verse says, V'chol Rechev Mitzrayim, right? He came with all the chariots of Egypt. Did he really have all the chariots of Egypt? I bet there were a lot of chariots that didn't have any horses, that they didn't take. Where did the horses come from? Where did the horses come from? Didn't all the animals die either in hail or pestilence and all these plagues? So Vaday lo mikol eretz Mitzrayim ki beitz lefisha. There's no way that this was before WhatsApp. This was before the internet. This is before the telephone even. Okay? This is a long time ago. How could Pharaoh have gathered all the chariots throughout the entire land of Egypt in such a short period of time? Because we're talking about from the time they told him that they had fled, or fleeing, and they had fled, till the time he got them after them was pretty much like within a few hours, I imagine, not much longer than that. When it says lefisha, it means at the moment. Shelo haya lo shehut zman kochach. Obviously, Pharaoh didn't have that much time to gather everyone together. This is an interesting idea. Ela me'ir achas lakach. He took him from, let's say, the capital city, one particular city. V'hi Mitzrayim atzma. The capital of Egypt was a city by the name of Egypt. Okay? Afilu me'ir zu lo lakach ki min hayare et davar Hashem. V'hema hamiut. Now this is going to sound very harsh, what I'm about to tell you. But the only animals that were left alive that he can strap up to the chariots were from those Egyptians, I'm going to say who were smart, but that's not really true. They were smart, but who feared Hashem. You want to hear the craziest idea? Look in number 17. It's Exodus chapter 9. It's really, I think it's verse 20. I think it's really verse 20. But let's read the 19 through 21. And this is what the command was for the Egyptians. And now gather in your livestock and all that you have in the field, any man or beast that is found in the field, not brought into the house, the hail shall fall upon them, and they will die. So this is, the warning about the plague of hail. And what does it say in the next verse? Meaning any Egyptian who feared the word of the Lord, he who feared the word of the Lord of Pharaoh's servants, in other words, any one of Pharaoh's servants who feared Hashem, drove his own servants and his livestock into the houses. And you know what? They weren't affected, right? But guess what? He who did not pay attention to the word of the Lord left his servants and his livestock in the field. So where did those horses come from that came to attack us? From the best of the Egyptians. I do want to show you this Rashi on that verse. No, there is no, I don't know why, maybe I didn't bring it down. But I will tell you the verse, look at number 16, where it says, Exodus chapter 14, verse 7, where it says, he took 600 select chariots and all the chariots of Egypt with officers over all them. Let's read the whole Rashi. And all the chariots of Egypt, and with them all the rest of the chariots. Now here's a great question. Where did all these animals come from, right? You're all wondering, weren't they all killed? If you say they belong to the Egyptians, well, guess what? In chapter 9, verse 6, it says, all the livestock of the Egyptians died. Now, if you say they belong to the Jewish people, right? We said we're taking everything with us, all our livestock with us. So they didn't take them from us. And it seems like all the Egyptians' livestock died. So whose were they if this was the case? And the answer is, they belonged to those who feared the word of the Lord, to those who drove their servants and their livestock into the houses, like we just quoted in chapter 9, verse 20. I would like to stop there. I would just feel so comfortable stopping right there, but I can't. I feel that I have to just keep reading. And nobody should take this too personally, right? You have to understand why the Jews are paranoid, why we have reason to fear living in exile, living amongst the non-Jews, and we love the Bnei Noach. We love the non-Jews who really are fearing the word of the Lord. But you got to take it one step further. And listen to this. Rabbi Shimon would say, even the best of the Egyptians, even the best of them are your enemy, basically. Okay? That's really what it says. That you cannot trust the best of the non-Jews. Well, here it says the Egyptians. So I think we could make a jump. That for sure ger toshav, right? We don't have that today. But those who mamish make a public pledge that they side with the Jewish people, right? That they believe in the mission of the Jewish people. And that they believe in the Torah that was given to the Jews in Mount Sinai. And they will support the Jews in their mission. I think they're not our enemies. I know for sure they're not our enemies. I think that's what really separates between what this Rashi here is describing as the Egyptians, because they're into idol worship, and someone who has really abandoned their idol worship, has taken upon themselves the 7 mitzvahs of Bnei Noach, and I'm not, basically, I'm going to say, it's hard to say, but you can trust them, right? Yes, to a certain extent, yes, certainly not as your enemy. Okay, I want to move on. So here we have the statement that these people were very few, meaning that's how many were left, 600 animals. Okay. Elavadai, but with absolute certainty, ready for this, anytime the word ha'am is used, who is the people? Whenever the word the people are used throughout Tanakh, throughout the 5 books of Moses, Shebekol makom shemaz kira'am, Midaber be'erev rav. We're talking about the Egyptians, the non-Jewish Egyptians that joined with the Jewish people when we left Egypt. Mm-hmm. And just to help you with a query that I hope you all have, there's one verse that says we left in the middle of the night, and there's another verse that says we left the next day. Well, there's a lot of answers. One very simple answer can be we were freed at night, but we didn't really find our freedom by leaving until the next day, meaning we were released already at midnight. But we only became free once we left. But there's another answer the Yakar gives somewhere else, and that is that the Erev Rav ran. They actually did fled. They fled. They did fled. They had fled. They ran out of there as fast as they could at midnight. We did not flee. We walked out in the morning with our heads held up high. Okay? Keep that in mind, because he's going to have to answer about the Barach and Boreach. What was it? What were the people telling him about the fleeing, had fled? Okay, let's hear. So we're talking about the word ha'am, the people, speaking about the mixed multitudes. For those that don't know, I didn't translate Erev Rav, the mixed multitudes. Shahachu lichachila b'derech bericha. Yes, when they originally left, they ran out of there. Why? Why did they join up with us? Because they truly believed in the God of Israel? No. According to this, Lefi sharo b'malatan shel Yisrael. They saw some kind of privilege or advantage of the Jewish people, and they wanted to join up with us. So they weren't full-fledged converts then, until maybe Mount Sinai, or even maybe until later, and maybe even some of them never. I don't know. But their motives were a little bit off, let's say. So what was Pharaoh thinking? He knows his people. He knows his people. He knows they're not really the most moral people that joined up with the Jewish people. He said, V'chashav Paro, ki akshav, until now, al yidei sheyiru Yisrael nevuchim ba'aretz. You know what I see right now? The Jewish people, right, Israel, is in the desert in a perplexed or confused state. Remember, this is why he thought he could overtake us, right? He sees us maybe going in circles even. So you know what he said? Yomru ha'erev rav shasar Hashem me'al Yisrael. This is what Pharaoh is thinking that the Erev Rav must be thinking. If the Jewish people are walking around in circles or, being a little bit of in a perplexed state, they probably are saying to themselves, that God of Israel that just created those 10 plagues and took them out, maybe he's no longer with the Jews. Maybe he left them. Uba'avur zeh, and on account of this, Vadai ratzon ha'erev rav lachzer mitzrayma. Remember, this is still inside the head of Pharaoh. I don't like being there. It's a very dark space. But this is what Pharaoh must have been thinking. That what? That they're going to come back and join us. Remember, what was the question? Why did he go with 1/10 of 1%? What did he say? 1/10 of 1%. Because he thought, I have a fifth column. I already have, what did we say? Twice as many Erev Rav went out than the Jews. I don't need, as soon as they see me, as opposed to giving up on the Jews, they're going to join me. They're going to be my, I'll call it again, I don't know if that's the appropriate word, fifth column, right? They'll be on my side. They're going to join back to me and come back to Egypt. Zulat Yisrael Eina Manichim Osam. Okay, this is just disciple, but obviously the reason up until now that they didn't come back is because Israel wasn't allowing them to go back. But again, this is still within Pharaoh's mind. But when they see me on the horizon, when they see the Egyptians' 600 chariots coming to give them assistance, we're there for them. Meanwhile, he really didn't care about his people. But okay, could have helped them after the first plague, after the second plague. But okay, when they see me, right, coming to help them, Yirmadu gam hema b'Yisrael v'yeshuvu aleinu. They're certainly going to rebel against the Jewish people and return back to us. Al zeh samach paro beradfu achri Yisrael imase mispar. This is what Pharaoh was relying on when he chased after the Jewish people with such a small group of, I'll call them warriors. Va'al zeh ne'emar. I really want to just stop for 1 second because there's an important point I failed to mention earlier. In the previous paragraph, I just want to stop here for a second to say it. When they saw that Baal Tzafon remained, what they did was so amazing. They went ahead and took the rest of the gold of Egypt and beautified their horses. You ever see the Middle Eastern horses? It's like anyway, I don't want to say. But they beautified their chariots. They took all their gold, thinking again that the last deity of Egypt is this Baal Tzafon. He's really going to assist us. And we'll serve him by bringing the gold into war with us. As if that's what you would do. What did that really accomplish? We, on the other side of the sea, when they were drowned and they came up, they didn't come up alive, but the gold washed aside to our side of the shore. You follow? This is the way Hashem, where everything is so carefully planned out. And it's all to our benefit. Now let's continue. So we see they came with a very small amount of people. Now regarding this, now we go back to the beginning of the verse. V'yugad lemelech Mitzrayim ki barach ha'am. Remember, it was past tense. And it was who told? They told the king of Egypt that the people had fled. Now, if you read Rashi on that, Rashi mentions that they must have had guards, that they were following the Israelites, and when they realized that they were not coming back after 3 days, that's when they went back to the palace to tell Pharaoh. The Yakar, he's saying something different, and correct me if I'm wrong. He says, Lo sheshalach imem ikataron, not that he sent along these guards, that he found out that they had fled. Ki davar zeh lo parash b'mikra, because that may be a midrash, but apparently the Yakar doesn't see it clearly in the verses. Ela bebeso hu lo, but it was within the palace that people, his servants, maybe his administrators, started speaking to him and telling him, Shahalchu derek baricha am, dahainu mitzrim, that this is something that happened in the past. Meaning they're reminding Pharaoh that the Erevav left a few days ago in a rush. Hainu soinoi samalzeh. And this is a reason that Pharaoh and his servants would hate the Egyptians that left, the Erevav, the mixed multitudes. That's then. The akshav, but right now, as we read the verse, V'yeh hafech lavav paro v'avadav ela'am. What transformed, right? Something transformed within the heart of Pharaoh and his servants. And it says, right, regarding the people. So which people? We're talking about the Erevav. Nehafach libo mesina lava. They hated them 4 days ago, but now they have this love for the Erevav. Because what were they saying? Akshav ani tzorek lehem. Pharaoh is saying, you know what? I need them. He's got nothing left. He's got 600 horses, that's it. I'm going to turn them into the 5th column. Ki bli safek hayu li lazra. You know what? Without any doubt, they're going to be a help to me. They're going to be on my side. Bir'otam kisar Hashem me'al Yisrael, because when they see that God has left the Jewish people, al Yisrael atzmam amru, regarding the Jewish people themselves. So we've already heard about the word ha'am being used for the Erevav. But regarding the Jewish people, what did Pharaoh say? Ma zos asinu. What is this that we have done? Ki shalachnu es Yisrael me'avdenu. That we sent Israel away from what? Away from serving us. Lefi zeh, according to this, ma shene'amar. Now, up until now is all good. I have to say I'm a little bit confused at this point, because what he's doing, he's referring back to a previous chapter, something that he spoke about, and I'll tell you briefly. Now we understand when it says, Vihi b'shalach paro es ha'am. When Pharaoh sent away the people, remember we asked why is it used twice? So earlier on, he mentions that the word Erev Rav, I'm just throwing out number, 90+% of the time, it's strictly talking about the mixed multitudes, the non-Jewish, the Egyptians that came along with us. But unfortunately, even within Israel, we have what we call pchutim, inferior people. What does that mean? It means ignorant. It means the hater of the rabbis, the hater of truth, the haters of wisdom. Okay, that's what is the pchutim. That is what the inferior amongst the Jewish people are. So he just says, as I mentioned in an earlier version, he just brings us back to the idea of V'hi b'shalach paro es ha'am. So that is the second time ha'am is used, and he wants to clarify, not all the time is ha'am used for the Erev Rav. It's also, unfortunately, used for the pchutim sheb Yisrael, Amar Cain, that they're also amongst the Jews what we call the inferior ones. And that means the ignoramuses, the people who hate wisdom, who are not interested at all in the truth, and unfortunately we still have them around as well. So he just mentions K'mavor b'derek sheni because in a previous verse he describes the two types of ha'am. Again, mainly referring to the Erev Rav, in like 90+% of the times ha'am is used, and sometimes it's referring to the pchutim, that means really the lowest of lows. There are some such a thing. And so anyway, I want to wish everyone a Gevalta Shabbos, right? It's Mamish Erev Tu B'Shvat, right? Sunday night. Yeah. And I just want to encourage everyone to keep coming back. If you're enjoying it, listen, please comment in the comments below. Also, just have a great life and keep coming back, okay? So we'll see you next week.
Shir shir chadya